Julia is in the studio, my beautiful colleague, and it's really great that I've got you here because not only are we pretty experienced when it comes to kids going back to school, and this episode is all about when school becomes more than school, but also because we have 3 kids each and they're all the same ages, weirdly.
Yeah, like mirror image lives.
Yeah. Well, actually, we do laugh about this quite a few times. We've had situations in the family where Julia's like, oh, gosh, kids just got head lice, watch out. And then, yep, sure enough, mine do. We just seem to have the same timeline.
Yep,
when
totally
it comes
synced up. Totally synced up. I always get a little bit panicked when you say that someone's like, got the flu. I'm like, oh, God, we're next.
Yes, I know. We live on opposite sides of the bridge, but yes, absolutely deep in that parenting stage together. And I always think about you because there's so many times when also I'm, navigating things. I have all this parenting information at my fingertips and then sometimes I just don't connect the dots and you're like, have you thought that it could be this? So it's nice to have each other to lean on.
Absolutely. That's what, parent friends are for, right?
That's so true.
Yeah.
Now our kids going into year 6 for our eldest. Can you believe
Year 6.
it?
Oh.
And then year 4 for the middle ones. I always forget the middle one. That's a bit sad, isn't it?
Poor middle child.
Poor middle child. And then the youngest, obviously, both of ours going into year 1.
Yeah, which feels very grown up. I still can't get my head around it.
Whole different life stage. Now, if you were to talk about this stage of parenthood, how would you describe it?
Relentless, busy, very busy. Yeah.
Yeah, a bit of a logistical nightmare, I always say. It's almost as if, I don't want to say that because I love all my kids, but sometimes you do just have one kid too many because it's like how many ways can you be split from a logistical point of view, getting kids to where they need to.
And especially if you're a one-car family, right? Like that's where we are dictated not by time but literally by how you can get the kids to their after-school activities.
Yes.
I think that's probably the biggest change from, that preschool life stage to being a school parent and particularly primary school age because I believe that once you get to high school, the activities kind of drop off. But if your kids are at an age where they want to try everything and, do soccer, do swimming, do dance, do whatever it is they want to do, it's just knowing how to juggle it all, right?
Yes. Absolutely. And it's funny you say that about them wanting to do everything. I'm going through that at the moment where, you want to follow up on all their requests and how great that they want to experience everything. But, oh, my gosh, you just can't do it all, not just because of logistics. It's also expensive.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. And look, as well, you think when your kids are in daycare that yes, that is bloody expensive, but you drop them off at the start of the day and you pick them up at the end of the day and half the time you don't even have to pack a lunchbox depending on where you're sending your kid.
Yep.
And that's kind of it,
Yes.
Everything is so structured. It's hard. You're sleep deprived, you're in the trenches, but it's just a completely different set of logistical challenges when you get to that next phase, isn't it?
Oh, yes. And not discounting the fact that school holidays also impact for working parents.
Absolutely.
Now, I love that we're chatting about this topic today because you and I have swapped notes plenty of times when it comes to school and dynamics. And I think, whilst we can talk about all of the really little things that happen when you start kindy, obviously we've got experience across the different ages. And I thought it'd be a really great opportunity to talk about some of those things that we're always bouncing back and forth on, the things that no one ever tells you. And the first thing that comes to mind is friendships. Friendships is a big thing. I mean, for us,
huge.
It's, often we have this expectation that our, kids are going to find their people or, let's be honest, in kindergarten, I was always trying to scope out the parents I liked and then force my kid onto their kids just because I was like, I think I want to hang out with you guys, but it just doesn't work that way.
Yeah, unfortunately, kids are going to kind of connect with, certain kids whether you like their parents or not really. And look, hopefully at the end of the day you do like the parents because when they are little, as you know, you end up having to, drop them at their house or, spend time together and it helps if you like the parents. But I think the biggest thing about childhood friendships and school friendships is that it will make or break whether your kid wants to go to school, right?
Yes.
So if your kid isn't feeling happy and confident with their peers or in their environment, then, it has this knock-on effect and it makes everything so much harder. Getting your kid to go to school is so much harder. And between my 3 kids, we've had some challenges, all of them have had different challenges. But the thing that has made the biggest difference is when they're really solid and happy with their little friendship groups. And that's when life is actually, happiest and calmest.
Down. Yeah. And what I found the most, the thing that nobody prepared me for is that, when they first go to kindergarten, everyone's invited to birthday parties, everyone's hanging out, genders are mixed, there's no segregation. But it starts to separate very quickly when you start going into year 1 and 2. And all of a sudden, it's glaringly obvious when you've got a kid that's not invited to things or is not included in the playground, or maybe they just don't understand the rules of the playground. And I found that really hard because I then, got fixed on the idea of, I'm going to have to dive in and help them find their people and find their friendships. And for some of my kids, that didn't happen till year 3.
And also, I feel like as a parent, it's hard to know where that line is too. You've got to know where to step back and let your kids learn those skills themselves and build that resilience themselves. But you also don't want them to miss out. And one of my best mum friends, she's the same as me. We're the heart's on the outside. And sometimes when your kid is the one that doesn't get invited to the party, I feel like it's almost harder for us as parents. I feel like sometimes my kids have cared less than I have that my kid was the one that missed out.
Yes.
And then you sort of start to second guess yourself and you're like, well, maybe it wasn't done intentionally.
Yes.
Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. But it's all of the navigating all of that sort of stuff. You feel like you leave a lot of the politics behind when you leave school, but it all comes straight back, doesn't it? Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And I think this is what I've learn is that it's your own stuff that sometimes comes up. It's you're not getting picked at school or
and maybe that's why I find it so hard when my kid gets left out, because it's bringing back my baggage from me getting left out as a kid, perhaps. I don't know, but it's I actually find that that's one of the hardest parts about this age, is where they still need us to be in their lives enough to help them navigate those relationships. So you still end up being more involved than you need to. And look, I don't know how that evolves as your kids get older.
Yeah.
I'm
fearful for high school, let's be honest.
Because then you have to step back and, talking to friends who have older kids and, my nieces and nephews, my sisters don't know the parents of the kids that they're friends with. You know what I mean? Like, you don't have that access to know and vet the people, I guess. You've just got to trust that you've empowered your kids enough to know that they're making the right decisions and making good friendships and meeting good people,
And that's about the values, I guess, you instill in them across those years, like you say, allowing them to find their people and not trying to force or guide it, and trust the process that it will happen eventually.
Yeah.
I'll just remember that whole transition from kindy to year 1 and going, oh, hang on a minute, there's more to this than, everyone's playing and everyone's going to this birthday party. And it just felt so organic and...
Yeah. But for our eldest as well, that was complicated immensely by COVID.
Yes, true.
They missed out on that whole phase where everybody was invited to everyone's parties.
Yes.
And I feel like perhaps for that cohort, that has probably had a big impact, because that testing the waters and finding your people and meeting all of the parents at the kindy parties where everybody's invited, that kind of didn't happen for our year 6 girls.
Here's you connecting the dots again, Julia, because I didn't even really consider the impact that COVID had on that.
Yeah, no, they never had that let's all try and have a party and invite everyone, because realistically by the time the lockouts and all of that kind of hangover and everything kind of subsided, they're in year 2 or year 3 even,
true.
Because everything was social distancing, wasn't it?
True, that's right.
And by that point...
Maybe I've blocked it out.
Yeah. But repressed memories. But by that stage as well, I feel like a lot of those friendships were kind of locked and loaded, and then it became so much harder to navigate a lot of that. Whereas I feel like maybe our experience we're having with our youngest is different again.
Yes. And it's interesting because a lot of people say to me, oh, how's Nunu going in kindy? And obviously she has a significant speech delay with her disability. And funnily enough, she's doing way better than any of the other kids, because she's social and she's engaged and she's, doesn't see it as a barrier or a deficit.
She's probably not also overthinking it the way maybe our older kids would have,
Good point.
And so she's potentially more open to navigating friendships with other kids. I think that's one of the biggest challenges that my kids have had, is they're always worried about what other kids might think or, how they'll be perceived, and that might hold them back.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a really hard thing to manage with these little ones, isn't it? Just their confidence and their self-worth and, you know, just being able to own who they are. And I sent Ish to a school holiday program the other day, and it was all about empowerment and mindfulness, and they were sharing stories, and the lady came to me afterwards and said how Ish shared a beautiful story saying how someone was trying to bully her or pick on her for being a little bit different, and she said, so that just made me be even more who I am.
I love that. I love that.
Yeah, so I think as long as we're doing the right job with getting those kids to feel comfortable in their themselves, and yeah, you're right. It's the as they get older, they do worry about what other people think of them.
Yeah, it's very much, I think, walking that line between knowing when to step in and advocate for them or help them to navigate some of those tricky friendships, and standing back and saying, no, I'm going to help you to just become the person you're going to become, and, you know, be that person who can stand up to a bully and say, you know what, screw you, you know, like I'm me, whatever.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
I actually learnt very early on. I had this wonderful lady that used to be a neighbour of mine. She's very high up in what she does, producer of a big entertainment company. And she looked at me one day and she said, Emmy, no matter how busy you are, you get your bag, even if you have to have a bottle of wine in there and a laptop, and make sure you just turn up at the park or the play dates. Just be there. Just be involved.
Yep.
Because I was really worried about working so much and not always being the person at drop-off and not being at the play dates and all the rest. And I felt responsible that if I wasn't going to be there connecting with the other parents, or at least there supporting my kid to partake in that they would miss out on that opportunity of friendships. And she was kind of right. It was really worth me at least showing up when I could to just encourage that.
No, definitely. And I see this, you know, friends who work full-time and, you know, don't have the opportunity to be at the school gate, don't have the same experience of school. You know, if you can strike a balance there, it's ideal, isn't it? Because realistically, still in those, you know, first years of primary school, you know, your kid will potentially get invited to a play date just because the parents feel comfortable knowing that they know who the parents are, kind of thing.
Absolutely.
Know? So, yeah, and also for me and, you know, for you, making those friendships, some of those friendships are lifelong friendships, you know. You're thrown in together, but, you know, it's really special to have that kind of school community going on too. So, yeah, bring the wine.
Bring the wine. and you're right, the friendships. Parent friendships. I didn't, I felt very awkward when my first daughter started kindy when Ishk started kindy, because it was almost like, I haven't had to make friends since school. And now I have to make parent friends. This is weird. And at first I was like, I don't need more people in my life, you know, and now these are my friends. So these are the people that I lean on. We're the ones swapping notes, wanting to hang out all the time. I've met a lot of my people since that journey through primary school.
Absolutely. It's that community building moment, and you know, I understand that that's not the same for everyone. You know, you do hear a lot of stories of parents who feel like mums groups or parents are really cliquey and they can't find their people. So you know, it's a different journey for everyone, but
that's true.
I feel like it's you know, you kind of got to put yourself out there a bit for your kids, don't you?
You do, and just got to keep showing up and not be like me, who forgets to show up sometimes. Did that twice at the end of last year. Didn't show up for kitchen class twice, and got told, Mum, your name was on the board, and
oh dear,
shit.
Life happens.
We buck up from time to time, but yeah, I've certainly learnt, and I even know with Sabir, you know, he's been doing a lot more pickups because he's been working from home. And he's loving life. He's meeting all these dad friends. He's walking past saying hi to people like he's this outgoing popular guy. I was like, hang on a minute, what's going on here?
No, but I think as well, since that's got to be one of the upshots, I think, of the COVID lockdown experience, is that I think, you know, only 5-10 years ago, there were way less dads at the school gate and kind of getting involved, volunteering at school. And now it's so 50-50, I reckon. Easy.
Definitely in our school, there's definitely a lot of dads.
And I think businesses are far more receptive to the idea that dads are part of that juggle.
Yes.
You know?
Yeah, we were chatting before about the birthday parties and the friendships, and sort of in your experience, what was it like, I guess, for the three girls? I mean, it's been quite different for all of them.
It really has. It's all very different, and I think all three of my kids have had very different experiences navigating, you know, parties. No, and I think as well, sometimes it is quality, not quantity. You know, you don't need to have a lot of friends. It's not about being popular, is it? But at the same time, it's hard for kids. It's, you know, especially within your own family. If you've got one kid who's going to a party every weekend, and then someone who's like, you know, at a party 3 times a year, you know, and
they
then
notice too.
Yeah. And it's so hard because then it's, you know, it feels bad. It feels yuck, but it might just be because one of them's got like a smaller group of great friends versus someone who feels like they don't have that deep connection but is kind of invited to all the parties. Yeah. So it's it's really hard.
That is the hardest thing about parenting kids of different ages actually. It's the comparison, it's the awareness, it's the you're not wanting to, like my poor son, I always say my poor son, I shouldn't say that. My middle guy always seems to be the one that misses out, like last year they gave a certificate to everyone in the class, they forgot his. And then they did this and then they forgot to pass in the microphone. Like there was just all of these things that happened and the poor guy missed out, and he's so quiet and reserved that he will never put his hand up or shout or make a big deal. And so I'm like hyper vigilant. I'm like, making sure that these things are happening. And what I say to them is, because he started saying about the birthday parties, why did they get to go to these many and, vice versa. But it's the same thing when it comes to being recognised in the classroom. You can fly under the radar. You can get your school report and it can say that mediocre, didn't try your hardest. And, Ishk, who's, very vocal, hers is outstanding for, effort and trying. I'm like, but he is trying. It's just in a very different way. And, he's not getting the certificates and, he's very aware of that.
No, we definitely have that in our family too. There's one kid who is constantly getting, a certificate at the end of your assembly and one kid who's never had one. It's, and that they notice.
They notice.
But there's no difference in their effort or output that way.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just the way that the system rewards.
Isn't it
the
crap?
Kids.
Let's be honest.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't agree with it.
Yeah. Part of me is like so proud when one of my kids wins an award. But then I have to check myself because I'm like, no, my other kids have tried really hard too. And, you don't want to diminish their effort. And in fact, the kid who's not getting the awards is probably working twice as hard.
Yes.
It's like the little duck legs under the water, she looks like she's got it together above, but she's working twice as hard,
Actually, one of the mums in kindy, because I was class parent last year, and she said to me, she's like, what is this? Like, I don't understand where I come from. These awards aren't like this. And I said, I don't agree with them. I think they're terrible. And I said, look, I understand that they motivate certain kids, but as they get older, it's the same kids over and over again. They're crossing over with academics versus sporting and all of these things. And then you've got these beautifully creative and talented kids that might struggle academically. And, everyone's trying, everyone's gifted in their own way. And I just think that certificate awards recognition system doesn't always meet those kids, but also too, some teachers don't see the same things as others do.
Absolutely.
Some do not see it. And I was so excited this year. My son had this teacher who my daughter had, and she for the very first time she got the across the board the learning award. Amazing. Because she gets additional support at school, and it was all very good. She was so proud of herself. And then so I thought, great, this is his year. This guy even has made comments to me. He can see how talented he is with certain things. And then the teacher left at the first term, and we got this other one who, again, did not see him for who he was.
Yes.
Just really didn't understand neurodiversity, I don't think. But, I've had to say to my kids that I don't necessarily look at the report cards because I know that you try hard. I know that all of you try hard. They're all getting support outside of school. We're all looking at what they're doing across the board. So for me, that's not always a very clear measurement. And it was funny, Zarek said to me at the end of last time, he goes, do you think you might be able to open my report card this year, Mum? Oh. And I said, of course I will. And I do. I said, I just don't often, make a big deal about it because I just don't think that teachers always see or have the ability to really specifically give feedback on
and especially because they're often big classes too, right?
Yeah, so 20-something kids.
The environment is not necessarily conducive to getting to know kids in a way that might be best for that child. Yeah. And that's not true for everyone, and it's so down to personality as well, isn't it?
Yes.
That's a huge part of it. But I think for me the biggest thing is effort, Yep. So looking at more holistically at the view rather than just kind of academically.
Yes.
And that comes back to what I was saying before as well about the idea of, if your kids are happy and settled, if they're confident and comfortable in their friendships with their teachers, with their peers, then it all kind of falls into a position where they can sit and kind of learn better and be their best.
Yes.
And, show up in the best way.
Because they're not thinking about all this other stuff and it's the kids that are the overthinkers. They're constantly thinking about what other people or what just happened in the playground or maybe understanding rules of games or dynamics. It's not as easy for them. I know with Ishk, she needs a bit of practice to understand how to even have a back and forth conversation when she was younger.
And that is exactly what we were saying before about helping your kids navigate those friendships too, because sometimes they might come home in those early years and be like, oh, such and such said this, or they were being mean to me, or, you know, and it's often that they've interpreted something completely the wrong way because they don't have those skills to actually be able to decode what different body language cues mean, or that this kid might have actually just been, you know what I mean? They just don't have the maturity, and they don't have the ability to kind of understand a situation the way that perhaps an adult would.
Yes.
And so then helping them to learn how to decode those situations, or perhaps see things from the other kid's perspective.
Yes.
Or was that kid just being a real jerk?
Yeah, and I think that's the biggest thing I learned. Like, I remember having to teach Ishk about, it had been the school holidays, and I know that, again, you know, an ADHD like me, we like to relate stories back to ourselves and talk about ourselves a fair bit, and she, you know, practiced saying, where did you go, what did you do, what was your favourite bit? And then, you know, the next day she was chanting that all the way to school. She was rehearsing that over and over again in her head because it wasn't natural for her to engage in that conversation. And, you know, a few years down the line now, we've got lots of practice and lots of beautiful therapies and help that have helped. But and
that's classic masking too, isn't it, in a way?
Yeah.
It's like you have learnt through social conditioning that the way to be able to connect with your peers or to make friends is to kind of switch off your own natural impulse and reaction to a conversation.
Yeah.
And to actually kind of script it and be like, what did you do in the holidays? And not that she's not interested, but you know, that's what they say as well. As the kids get older, they will kind of find their little people and click with them. And if they're a little bit offbeat, they'll find their other weird offbeat kids too, you know. Like,
I love seeing all my little quirky kids together. They're so creative and beautiful and clever and still a bit innocent, which I like.
Love that. Yep, never change.
I know, never change. I want to keep the innocence there forever.
I know, but then sometimes also at the end of the day, you're so overstimulated and you're like, oh, can we just like sing a little less, guys?
But what I love about you is obviously the honesty. And that makes me think about, I guess, their different personalities and the things they're into. And regardless of friendship, I think we put a lot of expectations on scheduling our kids up, making sure they're doing everything. If they don't want to do it halfway through the term, making sure they see it out.
Yeah.
And I don't know, I feel like when you're young and exploring new things that, your mind can change. And
totally. And I think as well there's a big FOMO aspect to it as well. Like I think for my kids, a lot of the activities that they've wanted to do have been dictated purely by the kids that are doing it with them, you know, like if their best friends are doing it, they need to do it too. And so it was really nice to see my eldest daughter kind of just decide that, you know what, she called time on dance because maybe it wasn't her people with the group that she was with, and she was okay with that. And, you know, I don't know whether your kids are like this, but I've really noticed that my eldest needs a lot of decompression time after school. So on the afternoons where everything's scheduled up and they've got all these after school activities, she just wants to come home and you know, decompress after a big day. And you don't get that if you're scheduled up to the hilt with soccer and swimming and whatever else.
Well, look, I'm not going to complain about not having to wake up on a Saturday morning super early for sport. Yes, I don't have sporty kids, but I think they would be very capable of a sport, maybe single sport like softball or whatever, but at least we're not having to turn up for the team. And
you know what, though, there's another whole thing to that because I'm the same. I never did school sports. I'm not the kind of, but my kids all gave it a go. Last year we did a season of winter sport, and it's an experience, and it's meeting the parents, it's meeting the families, it's the learning to be part of a team.
Don't make me feel bad, Julia.
Come on, get your kids into it. Give it a go. You've got it in you, Emmy.
Give it a go. I've got it in me. I'll be cutting the oranges. Don't you worry. I'll make sure everyone's sorted.
You need to, soccer mum yourself.
Yeah. I don't know. I just feel like actually Nunu would be the one I think that might get into it. She loves, she's quite capable actually of, things like that. All the OT and physio and everything she's had her whole life has obviously paid off.
Yeah, lined her up beautifully.
But I do say extracurricular or extra headache because logistically it's hard, but also, too, I just know as a parent, if you're in the depths of it, especially in those early years, and you've got a kindy kid, for example, and things are unfolding, and like you say, they do need decompression time. So
yeah, and also particularly for the kindy kids, right?
Yeah.
And I see a lot of, it's interesting, you probably find this too, but third kid at school, then you start to look at the first time parents, what we were like with our eldest, but then them feeling like they need to schedule something for their kids because their kids are missing out. Like, what can I put my kid into? It's sort of, I like to think of all of the extracurriculars as almost being like helping your kids to sort of find their thing, like.
Yeah, dabble a bit in stuff.
Yep.
I remember our fabulous OT expert telling me, she was talking about her sister's kid and how, we want to think that kids have to be the best at everything or see everything through. And she said, my nephew just does a bit of this and a bit of that. And you know what? He's going to be an excellent all-rounder. He can play the guitar, he can kick a soccer ball, he can do this. And I thought, I want all-rounder kids. Like if maybe they'll learn guitar for now and, if that's not of interest to them later, I don't want them feeling like they can just give up and not turn up for things we're paid for. But at the same time, I'm not going to be so hell-bent on them becoming Taylor Swift or whatever it is.
No, and that's exactly it. It's like if your kid shows a passion or, an aptitude for something, then that's great. Like keep doing that. But, if your kid doesn't like playing soccer, I'm not going to drag them kicking and screaming onto the field every Saturday morning.
Yeah, not worth it.
And how many times do you hear about people who were like incredible at something that got to like a really high level of a sport or an instrument or something, and then they just gave it all up when they became an adult because it was something they were pushed to do and they didn't enjoy it.
Yes.
Like it became like a burden and it wasn't.
Yeah, what's the end point? It's almost like they're working so hard towards something, but what is that point?
Yeah, and it was for their parents. It was like reliving some sort of, unfulfilled dream of their parents.
How selfish of them.
But I'm sure if you spoke to the parents, they were like, no, I just saw that they had potential. And but, either way, it's like that's one of the beautiful things I think about primary school is that you can kind of just do 6 months or 12 months of something and give it a go and, feel it out. And also on the flip side of that, I don't feel like parents should feel obliged to do the after school curricular things.
I feel the same about school holidays. I mean, I was feeling guilty, we're working, everyone's going off on trips here, there and everywhere. And I thought, you know what? I didn't go up to all these places as kids. We were hanging out in the backyard. We were hanging out in the neighbourhood. So I'm not going to feel so guilty about it.
They say that boredom is like the master of creativity, right? Like when your kids are just sitting in the boredom, that's when they have those incredible moments where they can imagine things. And I've seen that. It was like the first couple of the days of the school holidays, my kids just didn't know what to do with themselves. They were like, I'm bored. They were going for devices.
Yes.
And then sort of bit by bit, they go outside and they start making big cubbies and they come up with these elaborate imagination games. And that's, I think, really important for kids. It's important for them to also have downtime, right?
I think so. I think downtime's everything, especially
unstructured downtime.
Exactly, because I think school is a lot. I mean, especially in the early days, kindy, they say it's like learning a new language. And then the complexities of friendships as you go across the years. I think if they're dealing with all of that during the school term, then it's okay to just have a bit of
downtime.
Bit of nothing. I like my downtime.
Yeah.
Now, obviously talking about the teacher sort of side of things, and it's interesting because I actually was speaking to a mum at a birthday party and she was like, I've been messaging and emailing this teacher. I'm not so sure about him. He hasn't replied. And I was like, you know what? It's the first week back of term. I have 3 kids with additional needs. They're all on NDIS. They need stuff. But I don't even message straight away in that week. And for me, I've always realised it's better to go in with a new teacher or a teacher in a partnership, not against them. Because the minute you set that relationship off and that, you're demanding and wanting this and, I just feel like it's not the right type of relationship.
No, absolutely. And I think it's also... I feel like I hold back sometimes in my communications with my kids' teachers because I don't ever want to be that parent, the needy parent that's constantly sending messages to the school or bombarding them. But it's also up to you to be your advocate for your child, right? So if it's required. So, but no, I completely agree. I think setting up the tone for the year and kind of developing a healthy relationship, working relationship with your kids' teacher is really important, particularly if they do have additional needs, like you said, or, challenges that need to be addressed.
Yeah, and I mean, everyone's kid is important to them and their outcomes are important, and some feel, a little bit more heightened around that kind of theme because of an experience they've had the year before or maybe their own experience. Like we say, this stuff comes up. But yeah, I really have learnt over the years and through some of the experts that we've had contributing at Kiindred that, it is about having a really healthy relationship with that teacher, communicating with them when you need to. I mean, obviously being aware that there's also 20-something other kids in that class.
Absolutely. No, I honestly don't know how they do it. Like my own 3 kids drive me absolutely nuts. And I know that the teachers probably command a hell of a lot more respect from the classroom than I do for my own kids, but I have nothing but respect for teachers. I don't know how they do it. So I think, I feel like the teachers know which parents are those parents too. And no one ever wants to have that impact their own kids either.
No way. I don't want to be that parent. I don't want to be the annoying one that's kind of.
But there's one. You know, there's at least one in every class, right? And like I said, the teachers know it. They know who that mum is, right? The whinger.
Yes.
Yep.
Always complaining. And I think that negativity also seeps down to the kids as well, or that expectation, or, you know, I should be first and I should, you know, like I feel like there's a lot that happens at home that you see in the playground.
Yeah. Oh, and especially in kindy. Oh, my goodness. I think some of the stories that those kindy teachers would hear about things that happen at home, also out of context as well, then you're like,
yes.
Seriously, the joys.
Actually, can I tell a funny story? Because actually during COVID, I'll never forget, it was when we were doing the online learning, and the class, it was when Ish was in kindy, and the class, was it kindy? Yeah. Ish was in kindy, and the class had, you know, they were sharing stuff around the class or whatever, and one of the kids had left his microphone off mute, and mum was on a phone call, a work call, and she was not very nice to the person at that receiving end. And I, to this day, have not forgotten that mum as that mum that spoke to someone like that. I thought, you bitch.
Oh, that's so funny. So then, you know, talking of judging parents, then what parent are you? What kind of parent do you think you are in the classroom?
Me?
Yeah.
Oh, in the classroom. Well,
no, like you know.
Okay, so
how do you think the teacher would perceive you?
Depends on which teacher. I've got 3 I've got to deal with. So I earn, like if a teacher earns my respect in that I know that they know what they're doing, like I say, like, you know, it's, I mean, everyone's got different personalities, right? I always try and see things from other people's perspectives. I really do. And I go, okay, well, you know, this one's very sporty and he's very capable and confident. He likes to tell you how capable he is. He likes to be across everything. Probably not as in tune with, you know, the neurodivergence of this, but I know how to work with that. Then I've got this one that I'm like, well, you don't really quite understand my child, but I'll work with you as long as they're turning up to school every day and happy. The kindy teacher, oh my gosh, obviously my youngest has needed a lot more. Love him. Oh my God. I'm like, can we have you year after year after year? And I think we've got that mutual kind of relationship where, yeah, I was a class parent. I was willing to help and contribute, kept my communication simple, didn't bombard. So I'd like to think that maybe he thought I was okay. I'm definitely not the annoying one.
You're not the one who, you know, treats people very badly in the back of Zoom calls.
No, I definitely don't do that. I'll tell you something I do though. I always make sure, and I've only started doing this in the last year or two, I guess I've had the brain capacity to, I always like to challenge perceptions. And I believe that it's, even if it's one conversation, one comment, that just seeing things from a different perspective might be able to help others see things differently. And I remember very clearly, you know, on a WhatsApp group, there was something about kids being dropped off. And I said, you know, it's really challenging for kindy kids, that sometimes it's hard to get them on time. I've been that mum with 3 kids, almost had a meltdown trying to get my kids. And they're like, oh, well, it's easy. Here are some tips and here is this. And I said, well, I actually have a parenting business. So I've got access to plenty of resources. But I'm telling you now that there are just some things that just don't work out the way they should, and we should be thinking about all parents. And I always think back to all of those mums or dads, whoever's at that pickup line struggling to get their kids there at the last minute. They're usually the kids with the sensory looking clothes on or whatever, and I know that they've had a hard morning.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, like unless you've ever parented a kid with, you know, additional needs or anxiety or like, you know, other, it's a completely, like, that's one of the things that I've learned is you can't judge because you honestly don't know what other people are dealing with.
Think about it, yeah.
And so,
or even their own mental health.
Yeah, absolutely.
Maybe they're struggling in parenthood. I always think about that too. I always sort of do a bit of a sense check of the parent. Oh, you know, that's constantly like this. You're like, oh.
But it might not even be the parent that's like that. You know what I mean? And statistically speaking, there are a lot of parents that we see at the school gate who are just masking or covering it up, and they're dealing with their own stuff, aren't they? So, you know, they're the ones that you worry about. I think that's also, once again, bringing it back to that whole, you know, community is really important.
And just being respectful and understanding and kind.
Yes.
And I think if you can project that kindness, and I always make a point of saying to my kids, you know, if such and such being like that, I said, I wonder what happened to them for them to feel like that.
We're always saying to our girls that often if someone's bullying you, it's actually probably more about them
and
what they've got going on than it is about you.
Yeah, they're feeling out of control or I remember
acting out about something that might be happening in their own life.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think that's a really important skill you can give your kids, is to think from someone else's perspective. And,
absolutely.
And I think with other parents, parents, you need to be kind because, you know, we might not gel with a certain personality, or again, someone might be masking and you might think, God, I swear people used to think, you're asking me what the teachers think of me. I swear other parents used to probably think I was just.
Yeah, and I think you know, maybe there's the perception that you might be the stuck-up bitch or whatever.
Yeah.
But only because.
Is that what you think, Julia?
Oh, you've outed me.
Jeez, come on.
No, but what I mean is if you're masking or you're like just trying to keep it together or you're not opening it up, then that might be the perception you throw, but that's not the case. And that's why it's really nice. It's really important not to just kind of have those first impressions and actually kind of get to know people a little bit perhaps.
Yes.
But yeah, I do find navigating the parent friendships sometimes is one of the trickiest parts
Absolutely.
of parenting.
It is.
Primary schooling.
Is there anything else that you would tell anyone, things nobody tells you, or something that you wish you had known?
It's a really good question.
It's a big one, isn't it?
I don't know.
It's very broad.
Well, because a lot of the things that I didn't know, I've now come to learn. But I think it's just, you know, don't stress about it, right?
Yes. Actually, yes. Can I just finish on that? Because I think that is an important one, the stressing. I've heard so many people stressing over homework and this and oh my God, and they haven't done the homework and what the. And I was just like, it's okay. If it's creating stress and tension in your house, just let it go. I've told teachers, we do therapies after school, we do speech therapy, we're onto it. We're not doing homework.
Yes.
Okay, we'll read. We're always reading. We are not doing homework. And I have had to do that when things have just felt a bit too much.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people come into this journey with their own expectations of what they think that looks like and what they think that should be, and every family is different. But yeah, certainly all the professional advice I've gotten around it is if the homework
feels too much.
Yeah, if it's too much,
it's okay.
Having a healthy, happy, well-adjusted child is so much more important than having a kid who's top of the class academically or like, you know, it's their mental well-being is so much more important, and I think that's a huge thing.
Yeah. Couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
All right. Good chat, Julia.
Thanks for having me.
Hopefully we get to see you in the studio again soon. What a treat.
Thanks, Emmy.